What is going on with the U? Welcome to the Voice of College Football Miami. Please like the video, even if you don't agree with me, if you enjoy the discussion, the debate, and the analysis here at the Voice of College Football. Please hit the like button. Share the videos out on social media. Stir up some more conversation here at the Voice of College Football. Share these videos out on social media. Bring some folks in. We go live with you each and every Wednesday at 7 Eastern Time, Thursday at 8 Eastern Time with Cam Underwood on Wednesday, the Wholesome One on Thursday. All right, considering what happened to the U and what has happened to this football team over the past 5 or 6 weeks, I thought we should address the football program as it stands here in 2022 and look at some history as well here at the Voice of College Football. Of course, hit the comments down below. Let me know what you think. All right, the team looks awful. 3-4 on the season, 1-2 in the ACC against a schedule that most of us thought would, if played up to its talent level, that this season Miami should have gone 10-2 minimum, with 2 games against Clemson and Texas A&M that would be winnable, but in which they would be a clear underdog, but not a situation that was lost for sure, that they would be able to challenge and possibly win at Texas A&M and at Clemson, that Miami would be a better football team with more talent against every other team on the schedule. And then they would probably, it's understandable, over the course of 10 other games, trip up once. And that's the conclusion that I came to in predicting Miami to go 9-3 this season. But here we are. 3-4, 1-2 in the ACC. And consider this is not a tough schedule. Consider that Miami's had similar starts in 2021. That was just last season at 2-4. They did rally under Manny Diaz and finished 7-5, defeating 2 of the best teams in the conference in Pitt, who won the conference, and also NC State, probably the second best team in the Atlantic, to Clemson. In 2019, the team started at 2-3. They finished at 6-7. That was the embarrassing Louisiana Tech game in the bowl game in getting shut out by a G5 team, the only Power 5 team to ever get shut out by a G5. 2012, you have to go back to get a losing start through 5 or 6, 7 games in that range. You had to go before 2019 all the way back to 2008, 11, and 12, 4-4, 4-4, 2-3 starts there. Just trying to get a perspective on this start and how familiar this is to Miami fans. Well, the seasons have been largely mediocre, excluding 2017 with a 10-0 start, a 10-3 finish, and a top 15 ranking. Other than that, the top 25 has not been a normal home for Miami football going back to about 2004, 2005, in that range. Just since 2019, Miami's lost to Middle Tennessee State, FIU, Louisiana Tech, and a 3-9 Georgia Tech team. And now another loss to Duke after defeating the Dukies 2 consecutive years under Manny Diaz after having that dry spell against Duke, losing that. And I bring up Duke because obviously that was the game on Saturday, and also Duke football is synonymous with losing. If you're losing to Duke, then that's not a good thing, even though this Duke team is pretty decent. And we'll get to more on that comparison here in just a second. Miami since 2018, that was Mark Richt's final season. Of course, coming off the nice season in 2017, high expectations in 2018, didn't work out. John Richt, obviously the quarterback coach, and Malik Rozier at quarterback, and that whole issue there. Mark Richt's final season, 31-25 since 2018, 31-25. And those include FCS wins. So basically, they're playing 500 against Power 5 teams, 21-15 in the ACC. Okay, I've made this statement on our live show a number of times, that since Butch Davis, every Miami hire has been unsuccessful. And it shouldn't be a surprise, because I can also say it's not only been an unsuccessful hire, but that it's been a bad hire, and I will take Mark Richt and put him to the side. Mark Richt was one of the top 5 to 10 coaches in the nation when he was at Georgia. Actually, Georgia wasn't very good when Mark Richt stepped in at Georgia, took it over, and built it to elite level, near elite level. And I just believe that it's pretty obvious seeing Mark Richt now. We know what the health issues have been, the issues in some of the decisions that he made, that he wasn't quite ready and in the best place in his life to take on the job. He took it on, and he actually upgraded the team significantly, was recruiting well, and they had improvement in 2016 and 17. Then it fell off, and obviously, again, I think there are mitigating circumstances there. So take Mark Richt out of the equation. Here's the reason I say that every coaching hire has been a bad hire before Mario Cristobal. Because none of the coaches hired after Butch Davis ever succeeded at the Power 5 level before Miami or after Miami. So nobody was successful in the Power 5 before coming to Miami as the head coach, and then they just underlined or substantiated, confirmed that poor hire by not being able to go anywhere else and succeed. So all poor hires at the head coaching position, aside from Mark Richt, before Mario Cristobal. And that includes, of course, Manny Diaz, who should have never been elevated to a Power 5 head coaching position. He had just taken the job at Temple. That should show you something there. Okay, so they hire Mario Cristobal, and I wasn't super elated over the hire or campaigning that that was the best hire in the world, nor was I saying that it was a bad hire. Thought it was a decent hire. Mario Cristobal, obviously at Oregon, took over a program that was in decent shape. They were decent. Of course, we know the high of Chip Kelly, and then Mark Helfrich ruined it, and then Willie Taggart came in and went 7-5 with a bowl loss. So then in steps Mario Cristobal, and he had success at Oregon. He was more successful than he wasn't at Oregon. He won a Rose Bowl. He won 2 Pac-12 championship games. There are other issues within the Mario Cristobal regime there at Oregon, like not preparing well for Utah a couple times last year. Few letdowns here and there. They had a chance to go to the college football playoff. They went to Arizona State, a marginal team. They let down there late in the season a few years ago. Few pitfalls, but no coach is perfect, and every team has to compete on the field against scholarship athletes, so those things do happen. And he recruited well at Oregon, no question about that, and he brought that to Miami. The recruiting in the offseason had all of you guys geeked, and for good reason. The recruiting has been exceptional. The recruiting was good under Mark Richt. It's probably been a notch better, I guess, with Mario Cristobal as the head coach. Then he brings in, and he's a native son. He's been successful at Oregon. He's a native son. He's a recruiter. He backs that up by having a good recruiting offseason. And then he assembles a really good coaching staff, at least on the surface. Charlie Strong is a linebackers coach. Josh Gaddis, of course, won the Broyles Award. That could be questioned, but won the Broyles Award. Kevin Steele is a respected defensive coordinator, and others across the board. So going into the season, all positives across the board. Can't think of any negatives with the hire from the time he was hired back in December of 21 all the way up until game number 1 against Bethune-Cookman. But look at how they're playing. They're playing like a Miami team that we saw under Manny Diaz, the Miami teams that we saw at their worst under Mark Richt, Randy Shannon, Al Golden, Same problem, same issues. This is the most talented team in the Coastal Division. North Carolina is somewhat close. Nobody else is remotely close. Certainly not Duke. They lose this game 45-21. They turn the ball over 8 times. They turn the ball over 8 times. That is the most by an FBS team since 2009. What do turnovers tell us? Well, there's a certain random nature to turnovers, a minimal random nature to turnovers, but most turnovers are based on poor execution, laziness, sloppiness, not hitting the fundamentals, whether that's carrying the football, protecting the football, whether that's making a decision as a quarterback, whether that's as a wide receiver, not pulling the ball in, letting it deflect off of you and not catching the football cleanly. A lot of different factors in there, but basically they all point to lack of fundamentals, sloppiness, laziness. That's the problem. And it was in spades on Saturday. Of course, 8 turnovers. They lose 45-21. Mario said after the game that he's going to look at the tape. Coaching staff will look at the tape. We need to be tough. We need to be tough-minded. So he's not seeing a tough team out there. And when he says tough-minded, yeah, mentally soft. So it's not all about who's the most physical, tough team. It's a physical sport. You got to be physical. That's a given. But also, you got to be mentally focused and tough. You got to be resilient. He says he doesn't know how to attack this other than get back to work. He was asked about tackling. Tackling's been poor. A lot of missed tackles. Tackles all over the place. Missed by good players. By talented players. I don't know if they're good right now. But he says, hey, we got to practice tackling. And he talked about, wrapping up. Good form tackling. He's not seeing it out there. Tyler Van Dyke is the franchise, but he's injured. He was lost with a shoulder injury. He was not playing well early in the season. Then we've seen the TVD that we expected, that we saw for 8 games in 2021. He had been playing well, but he may be gone for the season. We shall see. Jake Garcia steps in, and Jake Garcia shows flashes of great potential, but he made a ton of mistakes as well and turned the ball over. All right, getting back to the program, I'd like to bring up basically how to evaluate this situation at this point and what to expect going forward. Because again, Mario Cristobal is not taking over Duke. What did Duke do last year? Duke lost all of its ACC games. They were obliterated. They were the worst. Duke was the worst team in the ACC last year at 0-8. Over the previous 2 seasons, Duke is 1-19 in the ACC. Mike Elko doesn't have Mario Cristobal's resume. He didn't win a Rose Bowl at Oregon, Pac-12 championships. Mike Elko was a D coordinator at Texas A&M, a really good one. He takes over the Duke program. Miami was here, Duke was here, and he's lifted Duke above Miami. Now, is that permanent? I don't know. I don't believe so, but I don't know. But for right now, Duke is a better football team than Miami. Miami handed them the game in a number of ways, but that's what bad football teams do. Duke the previous week should have beaten North Carolina. They had a 3-point lead. They were inside the 10-yard line to ice the game with a touchdown. They didn't get it in the end zone. They missed a field goal. Drake May took it down the field, scored, touchdown, bam, North Carolina wins. Still, Duke gave it a shot with a 35, 40-yard pass. They came that close to getting in field goal range to get to overtime. So they pushed North Carolina. They pushed Kansas. They had a tough overtime loss to Georgia Tech. This is a 5-3 football team that's pretty good. And they were a disaster last year. The last 2 or 3 years, the last few years under David Cutcliffe. Mike Elko can come in and take a roster that right now is 61st in the country in the total team talent composite at 247 Sports. Duke is number 61. They have 2 4-stars. Miami is number 13 in that list. They have the 13th most talented team in college football, and they have 2 5-stars and 44 4-stars. There were 44 4-stars on that Miami roster that played Saturday against 2 4-stars, and Duke won the game by 24 points. That's not Iowa with a bunch of 3-stars or Northwestern when Pat Fitzgerald has it going that's well established, being there for 17 years. That's Mike Elko in his first year, taking over Duke, elevating them past Miami. When good football coaches that know how to run a program take over a program that is awful, bad. Lance Leipold at Kansas. Really good coach at Buffalo, won there in the MAC, goes to Kansas. Lance Leipold takes over Kansas. Les Miles left that in ruins, and Kansas has been awful for 10 or 12, 13 years. Leipold takes it over. They get obliterated like they always do for the first half of 2021. Then they improved. Look at Kansas's scores in 2021. Last half of the season, they started playing Baylor close, West Virginia close. They beat Texas. And then what happened this season? Are they great? No, they're starting to lose some games, but they are respectable like that. And have beaten some good teams like Duke. Kansas beat Duke. And that's a second-year head coach. So my point is, can we find a coach that has stepped into a program that was ultimately successful, where this coach ultimately succeeded, but took a step back at first? Maybe Pete Carroll, not really though, because USC was in a bad place and he went 6-6 his first year before they took off and won the Orange Bowl and finished in the top 10 and then took off from there. No, Nick Saban had a rough first year by Alabama standards, 7-6, won a bowl game. So they kind of stayed the same for 1 year. But generally, I can't think of an example where a head coach who ultimately was successful took over a program, let alone a program that had good talent like Miami does, and took a step back and then was successful. Usually, these guys that will ultimately get the job done at a high rate, as soon as they step on campus, even though they're inheriting somebody else's players, and we all tend to make that excuse for coaches, and I get it, we should. That recruiting's a huge part of this. That, shoot, they need 2 or 3 years to get their players in. But really good coaches, head coaches, they take the players that they inherit, that they had nothing to do with signing, and they elevate them. I basically see 3 components to the football operation that the head coach is responsible for. Number 1 is talent acquisition, recruiting. Now the transfer portal included. Talent acquisition. How good are you at selling the program to the recruits? That's number 1. Number 2, then you get the recruits on campus. They're signed. They're your players. And you have to build a culture, an organization, a structure. You have to be a CEO. You have to message the players, the coaches. You have to get everybody on the same page. One theme, one purpose, one mission. You have to be able to communicate that and lead. Not just lead the players. You got to be able to manage the managers, meaning lead the coaches and teach them or support them to lead the team as well. So, number 1, player acquisition. Number 2, we'll call it culture, organization, building a program. Number 3 is game planning. It's all about the game on Saturday. Developing the players from the standpoint of their physical attributes, developing their skills in their position, teaching them the game, developing them as great players, or whatever their ceiling is. And then game planning for the game, getting to the game, and then executing on the field. And if your plan A doesn't work, being able to adjust in-game. Manny, always do that. Manny Diaz, Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal can do number 1, recruiting. Bam. Number 2, I think based on what he showed us at Oregon, I'm not going to be too harsh in my evaluation there. I'm going to say that that was largely successful. Point number 3, though, game management, scheming, time management, all that factors into game planning and execution on the field. I think that leaves a lot to be desired. And now he's dealing with the number 2 component, all that with organization and culture with this team and these players. Your thoughts down in the comment section below right here. The Voice of College Football. We'll see you Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time with Cam Underwood from State of the U. Thursday at 8 with the Wholesome One. And Miami takes on Virginia this week. And just my thoughts about the Miami program and where it stands right now. And the too early to panic situation. Mario Cristobal is an experienced head coach who has done it somewhere else successfully. But the signs are not good. My take right here at the Voice of College Football. See you soon.